During the Second World War, propaganda was more than just posters. It infiltrated every aspect of life, and even animated children's films were not immune from the effects of propaganda. Famously, Warner Brothers had Popeye facing off against the Japanese, and Disney had Donald Duck showing the dangers of Nazi fascism. And across the Pacific, the island nation of Japan was making their own animated propaganda films. In the 1930s, Japan had been gripped by militarism, and every publication form had basically been seized by the military, and strict censorship was put under control. So, any type of publication, be it newspaper, film, that didn't agree with the Japanese military was staunchly censored and basically prevented from coming out. Even animators were jailed for a certain period of time. In the early 1940s, Mitsuo Seo was approached by the Japanese Naval Ministry to make an animated film. And for his work, he created, at the time, the longest animated Japanese film. It was called Momotaro Sea Eagles, in English anyway. Momotaro comes from the story of Peach Boy. A Japanese farmer found him on the river, and a boy grew out of the peach and became unusually strong. Only this story is adapted to where Momotaro is a military commander, and he's commanding a fleet of Japanese warships in the Pacific as they're going to attack a demon island, which in the original story was an island of demons, but only this time around it's Pearl Harbor. So, Sea Eagles, interestingly enough, has actual footage from the attack on Pearl Harbor that was taken from the Japanese aircraft. So it's a rather intriguing kind of endeavor in that sense. And even everything about that film is designed and oriented towards children, and also the Japanese grand epic and idea of uniting Pacific peoples, because all of the kind of cute creatures that are helping man the aircraft on this carrier are kind of depictions of Southeast Asian peoples that are coming together to fight the Americans. And more interestingly enough, in Sea Eagles, the enemies they fight are almost direct rip-offs of Popeye characters, because that was kind of the influence Western art had on the Japanese. So these characters on this island that they eventually attacked resemble them heavily in animation and style. Mitsuo Seo was approached again by the Japanese Naval Ministry to make another film, this time called Momotaro Divine Sea Warriors, and this time it would be a longer epic. And to draw inspiration, the Naval Ministry actually showed Seo the American film Fantasia, which kind of inspired a lot of his animation stuff around this time. And so he pushed forward to make it, which at this time, running at about 74 minutes long, became the first full-length Japanese animated feature film. And it's a pretty intriguing happenstance. Unfortunately, the film came out in April of 1945, and if you remember World War II, or the history around it, what you'll find out is that was probably one of the worst months for the Axis powers for the entire war. At that point in time, Germany was being knocked out of the war, with Berlin being completely surrounded. And at this point, American forces had mostly liberated the Philippines and were now landing in Okinawa. And the first firebomb raids over Tokyo and Japan had begun, to massive casualty levels. So, Momotaro Divine Sea Warriors is intriguing because it's the last animated propaganda film they released, but also because it was thought lost to time. A lot of people have thought the film was destroyed by American occupational forces, or that the celluloid the film was made on had been reused for other Japanese projects. But the film was actually found in 1983 in a warehouse where it had sat for about 40 years. So it has that kind of interesting place in history where it was thought lost and found again, like a lot of the scenes for films like Metropolis that were thought to be completely gone forever in history. So this film had a unique resurgence where it actually came out on VHS later in 1984. So it's a pretty unique moment in animated history. Momotaro Divine Sea Warriors and Momotaro Sea Eagles are rather unique in the sense that they were oriented mostly towards children, and the Naval Ministry wanted it to be designed to inspire Japanese children to have the fighting spirit to face off against the Americans and European powers. So it's a pretty intriguing event in that sense. And not to mention, these films for the time were very dark. In Divine Sea Warriors, you actually have a scene where Japanese forces, which are depicted as rather kind of adorable bunnies and creatures, taking a British tank and actually seizing it with bayonets and grenades. So it almost kind of mimics like the film Plague Dogs or Watershed Down on this level of darkness. And then in the end, it's ominous scene of the children jumping out of a tree, practicing being paratroopers landing on a chalk-shaped North America. So it has kind of that dubious honor of being a propaganda film, but also because of the skill it showed Japanese animators had risen to in the 1940s. So it has a unique place in Japanese history, and not only that, but the history of animation. So that's the snippet. Thanks for watching.